In the 1520s, when Spanish galleons ruled the oceans, a seasoned sailor named Pedro Serrano was sailing home from the Indies aboard a heavily laden merchant ship. One calm afternoon in the Caribbean, without warning, a ferocious storm rose. The sky turned black, waves towered like mountains, and the ship was hurled against an unseen reef. Timber cracked, men screamed, and in moments the vessel broke apart. Pedro clutched a broken spar and leapt into the raging sea. Through the long, freezing night he fought the currents. When dawn finally came, he found himself washed onto what was scarcely an island. Only a low, jagged sandbank barely rising above the waves, no trees, no soil, no stream. Nothing but blazing sun, salt, and stone. The first enemy was thirst. Rain seldom fell, and drinking seawater meant madness and death. Pedro searched the cracks in the coral rock and discovered tiny pockets where the storm's rain still lingered. He tore a strip from his already shredded shirt, soaked it like a sponge, and wrung the precious drops into his mouth. At once, he began scraping shallow basins into the rock with his bare hands so that the next rain, whenever it came, would be caught and saved. Food arrived on 4 flippers. Huge green turtles hauled themselves onto the bank at night to dig nests. Pedro learned their rhythm. When one lumbered past, he rushed behind it and, with all his strength, flipped the creature onto its back. Unable to right itself, the turtle became his captive larder. His knife had been lost with the ship, so he spent hours pounding a sharp fragment of coral against the shell until he could reach the meat. Raw, warm, and bloody, it kept him alive. Weeks turned into months. His skin blistered, then blackened and thickened until it looked like burnt leather. Hair and beard grew wild, clothing rotted away, and he stitched crude coverings from turtle hide. Yet his mind stayed sharp, always planning. The greatest prize was fire. Without it, he could never cook, never warm himself when rare squalls chilled the nights. Flint was nowhere, matches centuries away. At last, he noticed that sun-bleached turtle bones became bone-dry and powdery. He selected 2 of the driest, rubbed them furiously together over a nest of dried seaweed, and after days of aching arms and failure, a wisp of smoke rose. A spark caught. He fed the tiny flame with all the care of a mother with her child and swore it would never die while he lived. With fire came tools. He ground the dome of a turtle skull against rock until it formed a serviceable blade. Rib bones became fishhooks and spears. Slowly, painfully, he carved deeper cisterns that could hold weeks of rainwater. He raised a low wall of coral slabs and roofed it with stretched hides to give himself shade from the murderous sun. Years passed, 7 of them. He marked each day with a notch on a slab of stone so time would not swallow him completely. To fight the silence that pressed harder than hunger, he spoke aloud to the wind, sang old sailing songs, and recited every prayer he knew. Sometimes he simply shouted his own name into the emptiness so he would not forget who he was. One morning in the 7th year, a sail appeared, small at first, then growing until it became a caravel flying Spanish colors. Pedro staggered to his fire, threw on every scrap of dry weed and bone he had hoarded, and soon a tall column of smoke rose into the sky. The boat that came ashore carried men with muskets ready. When they saw the naked, black-skinned, long-bearded creature running toward them, waving turtle-bone arms and shrieking in a voice like gravel, they crossed themselves and nearly fired, certain the devil himself had come for them. Only when Pedro fell to his knees and croaked, "Españoles, cristianos soy," did they understand. They carried him aboard half dead. For days he could eat nothing but a little broth. Bread and meat tore at a stomach unused to anything but raw turtle. The sound of many voices at once overwhelmed him, and he wept without knowing why. When at last the ship reached Spain, Pedro stepped onto the wharf, dropped to the stones, and kissed the earth that was not coral rock. Emperors and nobles summoned him to hear his story. They marveled at the man who had conquered the unconquerable. Yet even in palaces he remained half wild. He kept a small fire always burning in his room and often wandered alone to the shore, staring out at the horizon as though waiting for the little sandbank to appear again. The reef where he endured is known today as Serrano Bank, far out in the Caribbean. Turtles still crawl up its beaches on moonlit nights, and fishermen who pass at dusk sometimes swear they see a faint glow among the rocks, a fire that has burned against all reason for 500 years.